Full disclosure, the voice you are listening to now is artificially generated, brought to you by satisphonic.com. See the link in the description for more details. What statistically improbable thing happened to you? When I was a teenager, I picked up a hitchhiker, and then a few years later, the same guy picked me up when I was walking after I ran out of gas. Never saw him before or after those two occasions. My friend had 2 sets of monochorionic, monoamniotic twins, the rarest kind of twins, in back-to-back pregnancies. Identical twins that share the same amniotic sac and same placenta. Mono. Twins happen in about 1% of identical twin pregnancies and less than 0.1% of all pregnancy. First got cancer in 1993. In 2003, they told me to get my affairs in order. I had 6 months. In 2021, they told me it spread to my bones and lungs. They gave me 5 years in 2020. 2 years down and feeling about 90%. Fuck 'em. Just keep living out of spite. 30 years and counting. Goddamn, you're my hero today. It seemed like a bad thing, you getting cancer. Think about how cancer feels getting you. Keep trucking, you tough mofo. Got attacked by a robin in the morning, then attacked by a hawk 3 hours later. Weird day. Never trying that worms. A million. Body wash again. Edit. And now this is in my top 20 posts of all time. God damn it, Reddit. Oh, I had a similar thing happen to me. I got bit by a bull, and then stung by a bear. All on the same bushwalk. To make matters even worse, I went for a surf and cut my foot before I got in the water. I literally just walked back to my car. I was not going to get eaten by a shark that day. Must have been an EPA. Edit. My first big comment. This next beer is for you guys. I got a degree after aging out of foster care. I'm proud of you. Many years ago, I had a terrible day where my then Jeff broke up with me. Then I did terribly in a final exam for a college class. Then I lost my wallet, and finally, as I was doing the Charlie Brown sidewalk back home, some random branch broke off a tree as I was walking on the sidewalk underneath it, and the damn thing fell on top of me and hit me square across the shoulder and knocked me to the ground. I just burst out laughing because it was so ridiculous. This triggered an old memory from my uni days. I woke up one morning and a series of small things went wrong. Think spills, broken dishes, burned clothes while ironing, corrupted assignment file on my laptop, that sort of thing, one after the other, all morning. As I was leaving my hall of residence to head to my first class, I tripped and fell on the stairs. That was the last straw. I turned around, went back to my room, got back into bed and stayed there for the rest of that bad luck day. Cue Indian music when you have a bad day. Give up. Go home and sleep. Fuck it. Try again tomorrow. Not every bad day can become a good day. Some days are fucked and cannot be unfucked. When you have a day that is fucked beyond repair, that is the universe speaking to you, sending you a message. Listen to the universe. Go home. Save your energy. Tomorrow is another day. For now, just fucking chill. I have been hit in the head by live squirrels 3 times in my life, each on separate occasions. Did you have a hat that looked like an acorn? No, but I do always wear a hat. I was almost murdered in a case of mistaken identity. A guy came chasing after my car on the highway, waving his gun out the window. He eventually got in front of me, blocking my car, and stopped his car and got out. He came right up to my window, pointed the gun right at my head, looked me in the eyes and said sorry. Wrong chick, then got back in his car and drove away. I still have no idea who he was or who the right chick was. When you see somebody approaching your car with a weapon, run them over. You can do all the legal shit later. Run them the fuck over. Stay alive. I underwent a surgical procedure called a stapectomy to improve the significant hearing loss in my good ear. Instead, I ended up completely deaf. My surgical ent said this has only happened to 5 patients in the US. He was doing research to try to help me afterwards. I don't know how true it is, but hey, lucky me. My dad had his retinas spontaneously detaching. One popped off completely, and the other was in the process. The surgeon told him not to worry because 100% of all his retina reattachments had been successful. The one that was in the process of detaching was fine, but after like 3 or 4 surgeries of the one that came off all the way, it'd keep popping back off, and then the surgeon was just like,
"Ah, sorry."
"Oh, sorry. Retinas can detach for no reason. It can go spontaneously if you have bad myopia that keeps getting worse. I think a Redditor explained to me, it's like your eye keeps moving into like more of a football-like shape, and then it can just go boing. Luckily, I'm closing in on my dad's age for when that happened to him, and my eyesight, worse than his, was not an exciting life or death incident, but something rather sweet. I took care of my late father for the final 2 years of his life. He had Alzheimer's and pulmonary fibrosis, among other issues, so we had a lot more bad days than good. In the summer of 2019, I took my dad out for a date one day to a historic old drugstore that has phenomenal milkshakes, one of his favorite foods in the world. It was one of Dad's increasingly rare good days, where he chatted merrily with me about all sorts of old memories. I felt like I had my dad's former self back for just a little while. We had such a wonderful time that I intended to take him there again soon. However, this ended up being our last date. For most of the remainder of that year, Dad declined too much, mentally and physically, for me to take him out for anything other than very short grocery trips or to appointments. The following year, enter the pandemic. It was a very rough year with Dad. In January of 2021, my father died alone in a hospital in another state. Our state ran out of hospital beds, and he had suffered a traumatic fall that required hospitalization. That day in 2019 ended up being the last truly happy day I had with my dad, and the last fun outing he ever got to experience. 3 months after my dad died, I met a wonderful man online. 9 days after signing up for a 1-year membership, because surely it's going to take time to find someone truly compatible with a shy nerd like me. A few months later, we decided to try a first date. He lived 3 hours away, but wanted me to be comfortable, so he volunteered to drive to my town for the date. He looked online for an appealing restaurant to suggest and excitedly told me about this really neat historic drugstore we could go to. We went on a very crowded day, local festival, oops, and had to wait quite a while for a table. The waitress sat us at the exact same table where I sat with my dad nearly 2 years earlier. I was even in the same seat. 3 months later, we got engaged at that drugstore. So the beginning of the end of one chapter of my life crossed paths with the beginning of the best so far chapters. My husband and I have since decided to make a trip back there at least once a year. Dad really would have loved my husband. Husband and I visited our old hometown and went to a used bookstore we used to frequent. I picked up a familiar title in nostalgia and flipped it open to find a school student's ID card, the name and photo on the ID. My husband. Turns out his mom had donated books to that store many years before we all moved away from that area. He must have been using it as a bookmark and forgotten. It's not so surprising considering we used to live in that area, but the It was nearly 10 years old by the time we found it. That book was sitting on the shelf for nearly a decade, untouched, waiting for me to come along and pick it up. Bizarre. A friend of mine, A, had a signed copy of a book from his favorite author. While he was at university, his mother asked him if she could donate his books, and he said okay. He had forgotten that the book was in his room. He thought he had it with him at school. When he realized his mistake, the book was long gone. More than 20 years later, another friend, B, was in Japan. He was in a cafe that had a book exchange. He picked up a book that had an inscription. It was dedicated to someone with the same first name as our friend who had lost his inscribed book. B decided to buy it for not knowing that A had lost an inscribed book from the now dead author. B sent the book to A in the US. A was quite surprised to get a package from B, who he hadn't heard from in years. He was even more surprised when in it was the exact same book his mother had donated. It was still in pretty good condition, and even had notes in his handwriting in the margins that he didn't remember making. But holy shit, this might be one of the rarest coincidences in this thread. This reminded me of when we moved out of our family home that my parents had lived in for about 25 years. We'd already moved out, and the new owners had moved in, but about a week later, my mum remembered that she'd left some old photo albums in the attic. She obviously went back to collect them, and when we were looking through them, she realized that a young boy in a few photos of family friends was actually the new owner of our old home. I still find it funny that before moving any of his possessions into his new home, there were already photographs of this man as a child in his house. After losing an AirPod while skiing, I was able to find it the next run. I lost an earring diving in a deep mountain creek. I paddled in the water over where it fell out and I shouted, "Watch this," to my Jeff and dove down tens to the bottom and blindly grabbed a bunch of tiny river rocks in my fist and swam to the surface and held my fist high triumphantly. I swam to the bank to my Jeff and opened my hand, and it was there with the river rocks. I did something similar. My mother called me at home and told me she had lost the diamond on her ring while swimming laps and to please come and help look for it. By the time I got there, a lifeguard was putting on scuba gear to scour the bottom of the pool. I walked along the edge of the pool, looking along the bottom, until I saw something sparkly flashing off the bottom 10 feet down, dove off of the side and picked up the diamond. All done in about 45 seconds from the time I set my towel down when I arrived. Swimming at the beach with a friend. He loses his sunglasses in the water. We were far out and we looked for them, but couldn't find them. We left to grab lunch for a couple of hours. Came back to the same spot to swim again. Not even 10 minutes later, I touched something with my toe, reached down and grabbed the item. It was the lost sunglasses. Friend lost her Cartier ring in the waves and in about 4 feet of water. I thought for sure it was gone. Somehow, after about 5 minutes of searching, felt like 30, her buff picks up a handful of sand, and there's the ring. He told her she's not allowed to wear it in the water anymore. She agreed. I went to the beach just this last weekend. I chose to leave my rings at home. Lost my house in civil court. Represented myself and won in appeals court twice. Since my case was unique in this state, my cases were published both times. Moving back into my old house soon. Edited. Sorry for the late response. Reddit suspended me for 3 days for spamming. The case links via private message, so I've decided to put the links here. Hatteps Law Justia Concasses Washington Court of Appeals Division E201,748,903 Hatboops. Law Consensus Washington of Appeals Division E202,153,643,604 Rethind. Just be a good person to your family and stand up to crooked lawyers and courts. Where can I read more about your case? Also, congratulations. Not me, but a friend. He was a merchant mariner, lived here in Virginia Beach. He was always calling and texting, posting pics from around the world. One time he'd been out a while. We knew he was heading to Dubai, but didn't know where he'd be after that. 4 months go by. Nobody's heard from him. His neighbor, who I was friends with, gets married and goes to Thailand for his honeymoon. He texted me one day and said, "You aren't gonna believe this shit." He said he asked a local where a good local spot to eat was that tourists wouldn't be at. Guy takes him 30 minutes from the beach to some dive bar restaurant with no sign, no clearly marked entrance. He said it looked so shady he was afraid he was about to be robbed and killed. He goes in and it's a legitimate restaurant. He eats, drinks some beers, goes to the bathroom. Out walks my friend, so he took a pic and sent it to me to confirm he's okay. Imagine taking a flight several thousands of miles away, getting away from the tourist areas and going into a local dive bar and running into your fucking next door neighbor you haven't seen in months. Shit's wild. Friend of mine, American, was visiting New Zealand. She wasn't in a big city, a random small town that I've never heard of and probably couldn't even pronounce. She went to a hole-in-the-wall restaurant and was seated at a table directly next to her ex, who she hadn't seen or talked to in several years. She said they never discussed visiting New Zealand, and she just went on a whim with a friend. I was once in a cafe in a small, but touristy, town in NZ with someone visiting from the UK, and she ran into a work colleague too. My other story like that is meeting a girl in Prague, and then about a year later meeting a girl in northern France. When I became Facebook friends with the second one, I realized the first one was a mutual friend. Turns out they went to school together in the UK. I'm from NZ, not quite as out there, but still pretty random. Something like this is really fucking crazy sometimes. I mean, 1 hour difference would have probably enough for them to miss each other. As I think about it, I wonder how many more occasions like this must have happened where the timing was not right. You only think about the occasions where stuff like this happened. Just imagine how many more occasions like this almost happened. My brain melts. An infinite amount of circumstances took place due to right place, right time. Your very existence is the result of billions of years and millions of billions of events happening in a way that allowed you to live. I received my heart transplant after being on the list for only 7 hours. I had a friend of a friend in New York who needed an organ transplant. The doctor evidently told her, "You'll be waiting for a year here. Go to Florida." They have no helmet laws and year-round sun. She moved down and had a new liver in a few weeks. Hopefully that's the organ she needed. I mean, it would be hilarious if the doctors were like, "You're next on the donation list, so let's spin the wheel and see which organ you're going to be receiving today. Will it be a replacement for your failing liver? Will it be a third eyeball? Let's find out right after this commercial break." Good God, I've had 3 friends die on motorcycles in Florida, 2 military, 1 civilian tourist. Yet, I've never thought of this. Riding my bicycle on a commercial fishing pier as a kid, I lost control and rode off the edge with a 20 drop to exposed rocks at low tide. I tried to stop myself going over by planting my feet on the edge of the pier, but I knew my bike was too heavy. Somehow the bike stopped halfway over at a 45-degree angle. However, now the seat was in the small of my back, preventing me from getting off, and I couldn't budge it at all to get the bike back up. A fisherman finally ran over to help me, and we decided he would pull me as hard as he could, and I'd let the bike fall. I jumped to the side as he pulled me back to the pier, and it worked. However, my bike was still there, not moving at all. When I examined what had happened, there was a piece of rebar sticking out from the edge of the pier, bent upwards in an L shape, and it passed diagonally through the spokes of my front tire and completely wedged my bike in place. It was the only spot on the 300-long pier with anything sticking out. I most certainly did not stop myself and my bike from going over. Dude, damn. No, they said it was a pier. So not only could you have gone over the edge, you could have also been impaled by the rebar. True, I've never thought of that. So basically, 1 potential death prevented you from facing another potential death. Insane. Final destination, 9. Final V's destination. Hit by lightning. Sort of. Indirectly. Lightning hit a tree near the wellhead while I was doing dishes. Exploded the tree, fried the well, and gave me a jolt that made my metal fillings so hot they burned my tongue. Other than that, I was fine. Lightning hit a tree 20 feet from me. Traveling through the water I was standing in from heavy rains, and through the metal cargo trailer I was also touching, looping through me twice basically. I woke up on the floor of the trailer with my dad and uncle looking at me like an alien. I saw an ad on a Pepsi case at a grocery store for a text to win contest to see Beyonce in concert. I figured why not and sent a text and was entered. A few weeks later, I got a text back from the same number that told me I won the grand prize. I ended up winning 2 tickets to Beyonce's Mrs. Carter World Tour in Brooklyn and $500 on a Visa gift card. Used the $500 for some bus tickets and a hotel down the street from Barclays. The seats were awesome, and it is something I'll never forget. I had something similar. I randomly entered my name into a box on a Staples counter for an all-expenses-paid trip to Vegas, spending money, flights, hotel, etc., and won. However, I wasn't able to claim it because I was only 17 at the time. I instead received a $50 gift card. I was so mad. I won an all-expense-paid trip to Cancun at 13 years old, and they let me claim it by having my mom represent me as someone over 18. Back in community college, people thought I was dead for half a day. I was supposed to meet a friend on campus to go eat. I was running late because my dad wanted me to do something before I left. I don't remember what. I get to campus, and there's this fountain, the kind you can walk through or run about and avoid sprays of water. Around the whole fountain is a bunch of police tape. So I kind of think okay, weird, then I go to the building where my friends hang out. As I walk in behind one of them, I hear them telling everyone else I killed myself that morning. Turns out that a guy matching my physical description killed himself in the fountain. Between that and what he'd said to someone before doing it, along with my appalling lack of punctuality, everyone thought it was me. I always thought it was me. I always thought the Mark Twain quote to the reports of my death are greatly exaggerated was badass, but I had never thought I'd have the opportunity to use it. What was their reaction when they saw you? A couple hugs, sighs of relief, one going, "Oh shit," and running off. Seems they told the school paper it was me. The cops did a proper ID fingerprints and everything, so I never heard anything beyond my immediate group of friends. I know my fingerprints are on file, so I'm not super worried about others being identified as me. Before people ask, I was fingerprinted as part of a kidnap kit. They fingerprinted me, included a picture, and laminated it. I grew up a latchkey kid in the times of id necklaces and bracelets. I still have my early 90s safe, T-child laminated card with fingerprints, photo, and physical description that my mom had made for me at the mall when I was 6. I carry it in my wallet, so just in case I'm ever kidnapped, my abductor can marvel at how cute I used to be. Edit. Can marvel, not can have marvel, although now that I'm typing it, it seems kind of legit. Have all the marvel you want? This sort of happened to me when I was about 15, 16. I got a call from one of my friends on the East Coast. I was on the West Coast for summers, my dad, and she told me there was a bunch of people that thought I was dead. I never got the reason why thought. My AA senior class thought I was dead. They were setting up a little memorial for me at the reunion a few years ago. I only found out BC, a friend of mine from HC, a friend of mine from S, found my BP profile and was like. Turns out my estranged sibling told everyone in my old hometown that I was murdered. My dad's birthday was 3/3, my brother is 6/6, mine is 7/7, and my son is 11/11 for non-Americans. Dad was born on 3/3, their brother on 6/6, Op on 7/7, and their son on 11/11. Thanks for that. I was confused. Went to a county fair and found a season pass on the ground with my name on it. 4 people in my area with the same name, and I know 2 of them. What are the odds of that? Apparently pretty high. Do you know Gabby Johnson, perchance? I had my car stolen from work and caught the thief myself the next day. My mom's car was stolen when I was a kid. The next day, my dad and I went to the drugstore and saw her car parked in the lot. She drove a standard, and the thieves didn't know how to work the clutch. They didn't get too far. Unfortunately, the interior was trashed and the clutch ruined. I was on a road trip with my cousins in the 80s. One of them kept playing the same song over and over by rewinding the tape and playing it again. The song was Another One Bites the Dust. After 3 plays in a row, the driver pulls out the tape, says enough, and turned on the radio. Sure enough, that song was playing on the radio right then. Back when I was in middle school, I had my phone ringtone set to the chorus of Have You Ever Seen the Rain by Kerr. My dad drove me to my friend's house to pick him up, and I called him to let him know we were close. The classic rock radio station was playing Have You Ever Seen the Rain on the radio. My friend called back, and my phone and the radio were perfectly in sync to the same song. Would never have known it was ringing if it didn't also vibrate and light up. That's when you just throw up your hands and let the car swerve into a ditch. I and another one gone, and another one gone, another one bites the dust. Took a summertime organic chemistry class, 1 month of classes 5 days a week, then a 3-week break, then another month for the second semester. After the break, I reached into the box in my closet to grab the textbook where I had hidden it and felt a sharp stab in the corner of my little finger at the cuticle of the nail bed. I was running late to class, so I thought nothing of it. I became ill with profuse sweating and nausea during the day, then violently ill into the night with vomiting and diarrhea and swollen adenoids. Went to the ear the next morning, and they ran every test they could. 2 days later, I started having trouble breathing and went to the ear again. My heart was swollen up half again, at normal size. My lungs were swollen and my kidneys too. Doctors kept me for 2 days with batteries of tests, and after 2 days let me go, as everything was going back to normal. Then I began shitting what appeared to be a white paste, and this went on for 2 days. At the end of which, I noticed that my tongue and the lining of my mouth was almost purple in color, and I had a red streak from the tip of my little finger that during the day extended up to my bicep by that evening. Went back to the ear, and the doctor said he had no clue, but maybe I had been bitten by something venomous. I then thought about the day that the symptoms started and went to that box in my closet, and sure enough there was a little black spider in the box. I asked one of my professors about it, and he told me the county health department had an entomology office not far from campus, so I captured the little spider and went on over. The doctor there told me it was just a grass spider, and there was absolutely no way it could have envenomated me for 3 reasons. He said they have curved mandibles, so they can't hit the human skin. They have soft mandibles, so even when they manage to strike the skin, the mandible will turn and not break the surface. But most importantly, their venom, which digests the proteins that stretch between the cell walls of animals, get bound to platelets in the human bloodstream and is almost instantly neutralized. I showed him where the bite was, as evidenced by the red streak, and sure enough it was in the corner of the nail bed in very soft tissue of the cuticle where the spider could actually get a struck. He asked if I had some kind of platelets disorder. I made a quick call to the cancer research hospital I worked at in the evenings at that time, and sure enough I had donated platelets the evening before being bitten. A process where they put you on a platelet pheresis machine and extract almost all of your platelets for donation to kids who are in need of them due to having low counts from the chemotherapy. It was at this point that the entomologist started hyperventilating and asking all kinds of questions. He was low-key freaking out. He kept repeating that this was a billion to one event and he'd never heard of it before. He ended up getting me to sign some papers so he could have my medical records and published a paper on it. Fun for him, but not so much for me. The white paste that I pooped for 3 days was the epithelial lining of my entire digestive tract, which came out as white pasty-looking individual cells. By the end of the month, everything was back to normal, like none of it had ever happened. Interesting side note, when some spiders inject their victims and turn them into liquid that they can then drink, this venom dissolves the proteins that hold cells together by running between the cell wall. These proteins really the only things binding the cells together. Without these proteins, we would be reduced to a nasty white, almost liquidy paste. Edit, as it has been asked many times in the comments I do not possess, a copy or link to the paper the entomologist wrote. Nor do I remember which journal it was in. This happened in the early 90s and may have never even been out on the internet. Also, I don't know if that journal even still exists. Can't be that many people reading journals on entomology. Also, he was a PhD in entomology and not a medical doctor, so it wasn't in a medical journal. This is probably the wildest story in this whole thread, my goodness. Glad you recovered pretty quickly, all things considered. And I made an A on that semester too. I had a lot of bedtime to read while I was down. Lol on the negative side, though I am now mortally afraid of spiders, as I was sent to the 3 times and almost died due to one of the most harmless spiders therein. All that and you didn't get any superpowers. It was at this point that the entomologist started hyperventilating. This is how we know it's going to be a cool story, and possibly a scary one. Not me, but my grandfather. Weeks before his 93rd birthday, he was finishing a day of yard work on his farm. He tripped while getting off the lawnmower, and it rolled on top of him, blades turned off luckily. He was pinned under it long enough that he was about to slit his own throat to put himself out of his misery, as opposed to freezing to death overnight beneath a lawnmower. Just before he ended himself, he happened to see a crowbar in the yard that he dropped earlier. It was just in his reach, and he grabbed it. He proceeded to somehow lift the lawnmower off of himself with it, slide himself out from beneath the mower, crawl back onto the mower with broken limbs, ride the mower up to the house, crawl up the stairs, and grab his phone to call my dad. I need a ride to the hospital. I think I hurt myself. ATA. The mower was a riding zero, turnstile mower, worth a Google if you aren't familiar. It rolled on its wheels on top of him as he stepped off of its platform. With gas and the machine combined, it weighed just under 600 pounds. He survived this incident, but unfortunately, it led him down a domino effect of events that led to his death this year. When a farmer goes to the hospital, you know it's serious. No fucking shit. My uncle's a farmer. He's lived out in the middle of nowhere with his cats for 30 years. I've seen him with a 5-inch cut from a kitchen knife that he just wrapped in a clean rag, poison ivy halfway up a leg, road rash on the whole left side of his body from a motorcycle accident, and he's so damn casual about it. He's told me more than once, you always go in for an animal bite. As in, anything else, walk it off. Years ago, my mom was catching a cow that had gotten out in the middle of the night. She stepped on a rusty nail that went through her shoe and into her foot. The next day, she noticed red streaks going up her leg from the punctured foot. She decided she should go to the health department and get a tetanus shot. The nurse commented that the only time farmers go to the doctor is to get a tetanus shot. While attempting to get medical treatment, the doctor's office ran a pharmacy report on my medical history and prescription. My terminally ill brother, whose full name was only 2 letters different from mine, and we had the same address and phone number, was on a shitload of narcotics at the time, and through their search, they pulled up his report and thought it was mine. They yelled at me and kicked me out of the office, saying I was just looking for drugs. I was mortified and very upset, and they wouldn't listen to me when I said it was my brother and not me. I ended up calling the pharmacy board, and they called the doctor and explained that since we had the same address, phone number, and an extremely similar name, they had to search by social security number. The doctor felt horrible and gave me free treatment, and now he tells that story at conferences he goes to. It was crazy. So, of course, I had something happen to me that the doctors or nurses had never come across before. The doctor shared with me the tales of the conferences he spoke at, and said none of the doctors there knew it was possible for data from two people to be included in the same pharmacy report either. I guess they do now. Good for him for owning up to it and sharing it to train other doctors. It makes me happy to see a story like this end well for one. I once got called in to help figure out what was going on with some patient records. Turns out that two people in the same small suburb had the exact same date of birth and name, and had been admitted to hospital on the exact same day. They had never met each other, despite immigrating from the same country, and their name was fairly unusual in their home county. I used to be a hospice nurse. We once had two patients in our inpatient unit. Same first and last names, both in their 30s, both with the same rare cancer diagnosis. It was weird. Picking the slowest checkout lane in the grocery store every single time for the last 40 or so years. I too have bad checkout karma. It would be funny if it weren't so annoying. My friend was going to Ireland to visit her extended family for the first time and invited me along. We had a great time meeting her aunts and uncles, seeing the beautiful sights, etc. On our last night in Ireland, the family all got together for dinner, some rousing laughs, and a general awesome time. Her cousin had been traveling that week and was only in town for one night, and so she and her boyfriend swung by to say hi and bye. They left for the airport to Nice, and we went to sleep, getting up at 4 to catch our own flight to Nice. 2 days later, I had to be in Nicely for a job interview. I wasn't familiar with the Wall St. area, so I went extra early just in case I couldn't find it. But as luck would have it, I found it with no problem and had 40 minutes to kill. I had no idea what to do, considered getting food but didn't want to risk staining my clothes or having an upset stomach or anything, so I wandered around a little until I stumbled on the Barnes Noble bookstore. Thinking this was perfect, I went in and walked slowly through the store, looking for somewhere to sit. There weren't any sort of private spaces on the first floor, so I found the escalator and started heading up. As I approach the halfway mark, I see a young couple going down on the escalator. As our eyes meet, we recognize each other, and at the exact same time, as we both met halfway up down the escalator, we pointed to each other and turned as we passed each other, mouths open in shock. My friend's cousin and her boyfriend. 2 nights ago I had met them for the first time, and we had been laughing and sharing food and wine in her aunt's house in Ireland. And now here we are, crossing paths exactly halfway on the escalator. A moment sooner or later, and we would have completely missed each other. She quickly came back up the escalator, and we chatted about how crazy this coincidence was. I nailed the job interview too, because I just felt this surge of right time, right place. Ness that meant I was supposed to be there. I was so full of confidence and optimism, I made the whole panel of interviewers laugh and talk comfortably with me, and got the job. What that other guy is talking about. You meet two people, and then 2 days later, you meet them again on the other side of the planet. That's a pretty fucking crazy coincidence. I once met a guy who had been born on the same day as me, at the same hospital, and we both had similar birth names. His name was the first 4 of my name. We also weighed the same, and we found out later that we were born within minutes. If I was 12, he was 12, he was 12, Eurotype close of each other. Also, we were both born 6 weeks early, same color eyes and hair. Our moms worked at the same Walmart, and that's how we met. We lost contact a year or so after his mom quit. Sometimes I remember that kid and wonder how the fuck did that happen, and how the fuck did we meet. The stats on any of that, but it's gotta be pretty damn low. Years back, my best friend and I went swimming at a lake. He was so excited to get in the water that he left his phone and wallet in his pocket and lost both. It sucked. The lake gets deep quickly and is very muddy. We looked and looked, but water was too deep and it gets scary deep in lakes. Anywho, I'd say a month-ish went by and we were swimming at the lake again, and being the smart-ass friend I am, I dove down to find some lake trash and tell him I found his wallet, but it's like a soda can or something. Aha, bad joke, but I'm a bad friend. Instead, what happened went like me bobbing around, looking for stuff with my toes along the bottom of the lake. It's pretty deep. I touch something, and my blood runs cold, cause it's super scary to touch things in water. But this joke will happen, no matter how lame. I grab it with my long toes, a neat skill I have. Very dexterous. I hand the trash from my toes to my hand and swim up for air, holding the trash above me so that it dramatically surfaces first. As my ears emerge from the water, I hear my friend say, "Are you fucking with me?" I look in my hand overhead and I am, unbeknownst to myself, triumphantly holding up my friend's lost wallet. It was goddamn uncanny. I was on a train that derailed. This is the dumbest story ever, but the one time in my entire life that someone asked me if I wanted to buy a pair of shoes at work is the day, a few hours later, that the sole of my shoe came off. So yeah, I bought the shoe. Co-worker's husband bought wrong size shoes and not sure why they couldn't return them. Your co-worker cut your sole when you weren't looking. Boom, easy, say it. I ran into an emu with a Buick in the middle of nowhere, Illinois. Where deaf does an emu get a Buick? My mom gave birth to me after sudden onset of labor at 37 weeks and 6 days gestation, had a C-section because I was breech, born at 9:48. I gave birth to my child after sudden onset of labor at 37 weeks and 6 days gestation, had a C-section because my daughter was breech, born at 9:48. Section because my daughter was breech. Seems statistically improbable to me, but maybe not super odd.